January 14th, 1979. Tommy DeSimone gets dressed, checks himself in the mirror, and walks out believing tonight is the night everything changes. He's finally getting what he's been waiting for. He never walks back in. Goodfellas gives you a phone call and a reaction, and then it just moves on. No name, no explanation. But there is a name, and the man behind it wasn't acting out of anger. He'd been waiting 9 years for this exact moment. That name is John Gotti, and Scorsese leaving him out wasn't an accident. But to understand why, you first have to understand who Tommy actually was, because the film only shows you half of it. The film gives you a loose wire, emotional, unpredictable, someone who could snap over nothing. That version works on screen, but the real Tommy DeSimone was physically imposing, and people gave him room because of it. His violence wasn't random either. Disrespect triggered it. Anything that made him look weak in front of others triggered it, and once that happened, it had to be corrected. That logic was built into him from the environment he grew up in. But a man who answers every insult with force doesn't just create fear. He also creates enemies, and some of those enemies are the patient kind. And the first crack starts inside a bar, over a joke that most people would have laughed off. William Bentvenna, known as Billy Bats, had just finished a stretch in prison and walked in looking to reclaim his old position. He sees Tommy and makes a crack about him shining shoes as a kid. He smiles, lets it go, but the damage is already done because it happened in front of other people, and in that world, public disrespect isn't something you just absorb. It's a statement, and it has to be answered. He waits for the bar to clear out, then comes back. What follows goes far beyond a beating. It drags on longer than it needs to, and by the end of it, Bats is dead. But here's the real problem. Bats wasn't just some guy. He was a made man with the Gambino family, with a direct connection to John Gotti. Tommy didn't just kill a man. He killed someone who belonged to somebody else, and that is an entirely different problem. In that world, that kind of problem doesn't get forgotten. It gets collected. And he doesn't stop there. A man named Ronald Foxy Giroth crosses a line involving Tommy's sister, and he doesn't think, he just acts. No planning, no waiting. He pulls the trigger, and that's the end of it. But Foxy also had connections leading back to Gotti, and now there are 2 dead men tied to the same person. The first killing could be buried. 2 starts to look like a pattern, and once people stop asking what happened and start asking what needs to be done about it, the situation has already moved somewhere much more dangerous. So why did nothing happen? 2 men connected to Gotti are dead, and the killer is still walking around. Because acting without approval doesn't stay between 2 people, it starts a war. He sits under the Lucchesi family. Gotti's on the Gambino side, and nobody wants to be the one who crosses that line without permission. On top of that, he earns well, and Paul Vario's protection isn't something anyone moves against lightly. So, everything stays buried. Not because anyone forgot, but because the conditions to act weren't there yet. From 1970 to 1979, he kept rising. The Air France job, the Lufthansa heist, serious money, serious reputation. Every success makes him harder to touch because removing someone that valuable creates its own set of problems. And during all of this, Gotti's watching. He's not reacting out of anger, and he's not rushing. He's paying attention, building a picture, and waiting for the moment when everything is in place. Every move Tommy made, every body he left behind, Gotti filed away. Nothing was wasted, and nothing was forgotten. In that world, timing matters just as much as the decision itself. Move too early, and you lose control. Move at the right moment, and everything falls in line. So this isn't forgetting, this is positioning. For years, Tommy's problems stayed outside his own circle, which made them manageable. Then he crosses a line that changes everything. He goes after Karen Hill. Karen is connected to Henry, and Henry operates under Paul Vario's umbrella, which means this is no longer a problem between families. It's now a problem inside one, and it lands directly in Vario's lap. Vario has covered for Tommy for a long time, and he's looked the other way at things that were easier to ignore. But this is different. This reaches into his own circle, and it forces his hand. For the first time, he doesn't just have enemies outside his protection, he becomes a problem inside it. And that's the moment everything changes. Vario knows the truth about Billy Bats, and he's known it for years. He just never had reason to say it out loud until now. With the situation changed, he confirms what others have been waiting to hear. That he was responsible for Bats and that confirmation is all that was needed. Because now the Gambino side has what it could never get before, acknowledgement from the inside. Doubt disappears, and once that happens, permission follows. Gotti can finally act. Not quietly, not out of anger, but with approval from the right people. The question was never whether Tommy would die. It was always about when it would be allowed. Once the decision is made, the next step is simple. You don't chase someone like Tommy. You let him walk into it. So they offer him something that he's always wanted. The ceremony, the title, the moment of finally becoming a made man. And Tommy, who's been passed over before, takes it without hesitation. What he doesn't stop to consider is that he's not fully Italian, and in that world, that closes the door permanently. The offer itself is built on something that was never possible, which means the ceremony was never real. It was just a reason to get him into a specific place at a specific time. By the time he gets in the car, the outcome is already settled. And so we get to January 14th, 1979. The drive is quiet, the faces around him are familiar, and nothing feels off. He believes he's on his way to the moment he's been waiting for, so he's not looking for anything wrong. They pull up to a house that's completely empty, and for a second that doesn't match the picture he had in his head. Then the pieces connect all at once, and he understands exactly what this is. And then it's over. One shot to the back of the head, clean and immediate. No drawn-out moment, no long speech, just a decision being carried out exactly as planned. But what happens after is almost darker than death itself. There's no body, no grave, no record of where he ended up. His wife reports him missing, and weeks turn into months, and eventually the system just marks him as dead on paper and moves on. He simply ceased to exist, and the world that created him just kept moving. So why does Goodfellas leave all this out? The film follows Henry's point of view, and Henry only sees what's around him. He doesn't have access to the decisions being made at the top, and Scorsese built the film around that limitation on purpose. Adding Gotti's name changes what the story's about. It stops being about how life works, how people rise, fall, and disappear inside a system. It becomes about one man settling a personal score. The film wants you to feel how random and mechanical it all is. Tommy's here, and then he's gone, and no single person appears to be responsible. But once you know the full chain, 2 killings, 9 years, 1 broken line of protection, and 1 name sitting at the center of it all, the ending stops feeling like fate. It becomes much colder. Something that was planned a long way back. Goodfellas hides the names because once you hear it, the story stops being about life and starts being about something far more deliberate.